I felt her breath on my ear before I heard the words. "Look at me instead." My body froze, champagne glass suspended midair as my CEO's whisper sent electricity down my spine. 3 seconds earlier, I'd been caught staring at the bride, my ex-girlfriend, as she danced with her new husband. Now, standing too close was the woman who signed my paychecks, the untouchable Alexandra Winters, offering something I couldn't begin to comprehend. If you've ever found yourself caught between your past and an unexpected future, hit that like button. And subscribe to see how this corporate disaster turned into the most beautiful mistake of my life. The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday, nestled between bills and junk mail. Cream-colored envelope, gold embossing, and a name that still made my heart stutter, Eliza Bennett. My college sweetheart, the woman I'd dated for 4 years before our careers pulled us in opposite directions. Now she was marrying someone else, and I was expected to smile and celebrate. "You don't have to go," my roommate Jake said, watching me stare at the invitation for the 5th consecutive minute. "I do, though." I ran my finger over the raised lettering. "We promised we'd always be friends. Besides, half our college group will be there." What I didn't say was that I needed to see it to believe it. Needed to witness Eliza choosing someone else to finally close that chapter of my life. I RSVP'd that night, selecting the salmon option and indicating no +1. At 32, I was still single, married instead to my job at Winters Innovation, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in Boston. I'd climbed from entry-level programmer to lead software architect in 5 years, a trajectory that had consumed my life but filled my bank account. The morning of the wedding, I stood before my mirror adjusting my tie, a knot forming in my stomach that had nothing to do with the formal attire. "You look like you're heading to a funeral, not a wedding," Jake commented, leaning against my doorframe. "Maybe I am," I muttered, straightening my shoulders. "The funeral of what might have been." Jake rolled his eyes. "Dramatic much?" "Listen, Daniel, go to this thing, have some free drinks, maybe meet someone new. Just don't do anything stupid like object during the ceremony or get wasted and confess your undying love." I laughed despite myself. I'm not harboring secret feelings. It's just weird, you know. But as I drove to the seaside venue, I wondered if that was entirely true. Eliza and I had been good together, compatible, comfortable. Our breakup had been mutual, practical. We'd been going in different directions, she toward a medical career in California, me toward the tech scene in Boston. Neither of us had been willing to compromise. It had been the adult decision. So why did my chest feel tight as I parked my car? The ceremony was being held on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic, white chairs arranged in neat rows facing an arch draped with flowers. I slipped into a seat near the back, nodding at familiar faces. College friends, some I hadn't seen in years, exchanged quick waves and promises to catch up later. Then the music started, and everyone stood. I turned with the crowd and felt the air leave my lungs. Eliza was radiant. Her dress caught the late afternoon sunlight, making her appear to glow as she walked down the aisle on her father's arm. Her smile was incandescent, her eyes fixed on the man waiting for her beneath the arch, a tall, distinguished-looking doctor she'd met during her residency. I'd expected pain, perhaps jealousy. Instead, I felt a strange hollowness, like looking at a beautiful painting that once moved you but now simply exists as something separate from your life. The ceremony was brief but touching. They wrote their own vows, and I found myself smiling genuinely at Eliza's characteristic blend of humor and sincerity. When they were pronounced husband and wife, I applauded with everyone else, surprised by how little it hurt. The reception was held in a glass-walled venue overlooking the ocean. I found my assigned table, a mix of college friends and Eliza's cousins, and settled in for small talk and reminiscing. 2 glasses of wine into the evening, I was actually enjoying myself, laughing at stories of our college misadventures. "Remember when Daniel and Eliza got locked on the roof of the science building?" my old roommate Chris was saying. They were up there for 3 hours before security found them. We missed an entire midterm, I added, chuckling at the memory. Professor Harrington never believed our excuse. It was during this comfortable moment that I noticed someone unexpected across the room. Alexandra Winters, CEO of my company, was chatting with Eliza's new husband. I nearly choked on my wine. "You okay?" asked Sarah, another college friend. "Fine," I managed. "Just, my boss is here." "Which one?" "The woman in the blue dress." "Alexandra Winters." Sarah whistled low. "That's your boss? The tech magazine cover girl? She's gorgeous." I nodded absently. Alexandra was indeed striking, tall and confident with dark hair cut in a precise bob that emphasized her sharp cheekbones. At work, she was intimidating, brilliant, and notoriously private. I'd had exactly 3 one-on-one meetings with her in 5 years, each professionally cordial but distant. "How does she know the couple?" Sarah asked. "No idea," I admitted. "I didn't even know she was invited." I tried not to stare, but throughout dinner, my eyes kept drifting to Alexandra. She seemed different here, more relaxed, laughing easily with those around her. It was disconcerting, like seeing your elementary school teacher at the grocery store. After dinner came dancing. I nursed a whiskey at the bar, watching as Eliza and her husband took their first dance. They moved well together, her head resting naturally on his shoulder. They fit. I was happy for her, I realized with some surprise. Genuinely happy. "They make a beautiful couple," came a voice beside me. I turned to find Alexandra Winters standing there, a glass of champagne in her hand. Up close, her eyes were even more intense, a clear, intelligent gray. "Ms. Winters," I stammered. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Alexandra, please. We're not at work." She smiled slightly. "And Robert, the groom, is my cousin." "Oh." I felt foolish for not knowing this. Small world. Indeed. "You're Daniel Chen, correct? Software architecture?" I was stunned she knew my name, let alone my position. "Yes, that's me. Your work on the Nexus project was impressive. I've been meaning to tell you that." "Thank you," I managed, wondering if I'd slipped into some parallel universe where CEOs complimented mid-level employees at weddings. "How do you know the happy couple?" she asked, sipping her champagne. "Eliza and I dated in college," I said, then immediately regretted my honesty. "A long time ago," I added quickly. Alexandra's eyebrow arched slightly. "And now you're watching her marry someone else. That must be complicated." "Not really," I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. "We wanted different things." It ended amicably. She studied me for a moment, as if assessing the truth of my statement. "Still, it takes courage to come to an ex's wedding." "Or masochism," I joked. She laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. "Perhaps a bit of both." Our conversation was interrupted by a college friend pulling me onto the dance floor for a group number. By the time I looked back, Alexandra had disappeared into the crowd. The night progressed, and I found myself enjoying the celebration more than I'd anticipated. I danced with old friends, ate too much cake, and felt a genuine warmth seeing Eliza so happy. Around 11, the party was still going strong, but I needed some air. I slipped outside onto the venue's wraparound deck, the cool Atlantic breeze a relief after the heat of the dance floor. The moon cast a silver path across the dark water. I leaned against the railing, loosening my tie and taking a deep breath. It was then that I noticed Eliza and her husband dancing alone on a small section of the deck, swaying gently to the muffled music from inside. They weren't performing for anyone, just holding each other, foreheads touching, whispering things that made them both smile. I couldn't look away. Not from jealousy or regret, but from the pure intimacy of the moment. They had found something real, something I hadn't experienced in years of casual dating and work obsession. "Beautiful night," came Alexandra's voice, startling me from my thoughts. I straightened quickly, embarrassed to be caught staring. "Yes, it is." She moved to stand beside me at the railing, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. "Were you watching them?" she asked, nodding toward Eliza and her husband, who remained lost in their private dance. I began to deny it, then sighed. "Yes. Not in a creepy way, I hope." "What were you thinking, looking at them like that?" Her question was direct but not accusatory. I considered lying, giving some platitude about being happy for my ex. Instead, I found myself answering honestly. "I was thinking they have something real. Something I've been missing without realizing it." Alexandra was quiet for a moment, her profile elegant in the moonlight. "Connection," she said finally. "It's rarer than people think." "Exactly." I turned to face her, surprised by her understanding. "Everyone talks about work-life balance, but I've been all work for so long that I'm not sure what the life part is supposed to look like anymore." She smiled, a small, private expression. "I know something about that." We stood in companionable silence, watching the waves. Inside, the music changed to something slower, more intimate. Eliza and her husband moved back into the reception, leaving us alone on the deck. "Would you like to dance?" Alexandra asked suddenly. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry." "Dance," she repeated, amusement in her eyes. "It's customary at weddings." "With you?" I fumbled, horrified at my awkwardness. "I'd love to, but aren't you concerned about workplace dynamics?" She laughed softly. "It's just a dance, Daniel. Not a merger proposal." Before I could overthink it further, I offered my hand. She took it, and I led her to the spot where Eliza and her husband had been dancing. Placing my hand respectfully at her waist, I began to move to the muffled melody. Alexandra was a graceful dancer, following my lead with ease. I was acutely aware of her, the warmth of her hand in mine, the subtle scent of her perfume, the slight height difference that put us nearly eye to eye. "You're full of surprises, Daniel Chen," she said after a moment. "At work, you're so focused, almost severe. Here, you're different." "I could say the same about you," I replied. "At Winters, you're intimidating?" "Unapproachable," she supplied with a knowing smile. "I was going to say, professional," I corrected, "but those work too." She laughed again, and I realized I'd never heard her laugh at work. It was a good sound. "The corner office comes with certain expectations," she said. "Especially for women." I nodded, understanding more than she might have expected. My mother had been one of few female executives at her company, and I'd grown up hearing about the double standards she faced. "For what it's worth," I said, "your leadership style is why I've stayed at Winters. You create space for innovation without micromanaging." "Now you're just flattering your boss," she teased, but I could see she was pleased. "Absolutely not. I save my flattery for more important occasions, like when the coffee machine breaks." Our dance continued, conversation flowing more easily than I would have imagined possible with someone I'd previously seen as untouchable. Alexandra was sharp-witted and surprisingly funny, with observations about the wedding guests that had me struggling not to laugh too loudly. As the song ended, we naturally drifted back inside. The reception was winding down, with only the most dedicated revelers still on the dance floor. Eliza caught my eye from across the room and gave me a warm smile, which I returned genuinely. "I should congratulate the bride before she leaves," Alexandra said. "It was nice talking with you, Daniel." "Likewise," I replied, feeling strangely disappointed as she walked away. I mingled a bit longer, said my goodbyes to old friends, and was preparing to leave when I spotted Eliza and her husband near the exit, thanking guests as they departed. I joined the line, and when my turn came, Eliza pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm so glad you came," she said warmly. "Wouldn't have missed it," I replied, and meant it. "Congratulations, Eliza. You look incredibly happy." "I am." Her smile was radiant. "And you? Are you happy, Daniel?" The question caught me off guard. "I'm getting there," I answered honestly. She squeezed my hand. "Good. You deserve it." I shook her husband's hand, genuinely wishing them well, and headed toward the parking lot. The night air had grown cooler, and I pulled my jacket tighter as I walked. "Daniel," called a voice behind me. I turned to see Alexandra approaching, her heels clicking on the pavement. "Leaving so soon?" she asked. "It seemed like the party was winding down," I said. "You're not staying?" "I have an early flight tomorrow," she explained. Back to reality. I nodded, understanding all too well the pull of responsibilities. "Back to being Ms. Winters, CEO extraordinaire." "And you back to being Mr. Chen, software architect," she replied with a small smile. Strange, isn't it? How we become different versions of ourselves in different contexts. Which version is real? I asked, the question more philosophical than I'd intended. She considered this, her expression thoughtful. "Perhaps they all are. Or none of them. Maybe we're just collections of moments, constantly in flux." "That's either profound or the champagne talking," I joked. "Why not both?" Her smile widened. Then, more seriously, "I enjoyed talking with you tonight, Daniel. It's rare to have conversations that aren't about quarterly projections or market strategies." "I enjoyed it too," I said, meaning it more than I could express. We stood there in the parking lot, an unexpected moment of connection between two people who, in normal circumstances, would never have shared more than professional courtesies. "Well," she said finally, "good night, then." "Good night, Alexandra." She turned to go, then paused. "There's a company leadership retreat next month. I was going to have HR send the invitations next week, but you should be there. Your perspective would be valuable." Before I could respond, she was walking away, elegant even in the dim light of the parking lot. I drove home with my mind spinning, replaying our conversations, our dance, the unexpected ease between us. It felt significant somehow, though I couldn't articulate why. Jake was still awake when I got home, playing video games in our living room. "How was the wedding of doom?" he asked without looking away from his game. "Surprisingly not terrible," I replied, dropping onto the couch beside him. "Eliza seems really happy. And you?" I thought about the question, about the strange, unexpected evening. "I'm good, actually. Really good." Jake paused his game to look at me skeptically. "You're being weird. Did something happen?" I considered telling him about Alexandra, about our dance under the stars and the strange connection I'd felt. Instead, I just shrugged. "Just gained some perspective, I guess." "Perspective," he repeated dubiously. "Right." Monday morning arrived with the usual rush of emails and meetings. I buried myself in code, trying not to think about whether Alexandra would acknowledge our interaction or if we'd return to our previous professional distance. By Wednesday, with no sign of her on my floor, I'd convinced myself the wedding had been an anomaly, a temporary lowering of barriers that would never be repeated. Then came the email. To Daniel Chen. From Alexandra Winters. Subject, Project Nexus, discussion. Daniel. I'd like to discuss some aspects of the Nexus architecture with you. Are you available this afternoon at 3 p.m.? Alexandra Winters. CEO, Winters Innovation. Simple, professional, giving no indication of our conversation at the wedding. I replied with equal professionalism, confirming my availability. At precisely 3 p.m., I knocked on the door of her corner office, portfolio in hand containing